You know, you're running a behavior intervention. You're sitting right there in the clinic. A parent walks in at the end of the session, and they ask you how it went.
Right.
And you tell them, well, we think it's working. They had a really good day. But, I mean, what does that actually mean?
It means nothing.
Exactly. What does the data actually say? In our field, I think, just doesn't cut it. A good day is, well, it's an illusion.
Yeah.
We are dealing with human behavior, and if you are operating on a hunch, you are operating entirely blind. So welcome to this special behavioral intelligence edition of the Deep Dive.
It's great to be here. And, to operate at the top 1% of this field, to actually be an elite clinician, you have to fundamentally shift how you view your entire decision-making process.
Right.
Being a board-certified behavior analyst means never, ever operating on gut feelings. I mean, your intuition, no matter how much experience you have, is simply not a clinical metric.
It's not.
Every single clinical move you make, every modification to a plan, every decision to continue an intervention, it must be anchored in objective measurement. If it is not plotted on the graph, it just did not happen.
It didn't happen. And look, the stakes for this are incredibly high. Our mission today is mastering task list item H.7, which is making data-based decisions about the effectiveness of the intervention and the need for modification.
A huge topic.
Massive. And we are pulling directly from the BACB 6th edition task list, along with, ethics codes 2.17 and 2.18, plus foundational texts like Cooper and some advanced mock exam scenarios.
Yeah, working on it.
We want to get you exam ready, but honestly, more importantly, clinic ready. Because relying on anecdotal progress instead of graph data is it's like a pilot flying a commercial jet through a massive thunderstorm, completely ignoring their instrument panel.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. Just looking out the window, trying to guess their altitude. You're guessing your trajectory, you're guessing your speed, and eventually, you will crash the plane.
You absolutely will crash. And that is the perfect way to frame it, because it is quite literally a matter of professional survival.
Yeah.
John Cooper and his colleagues, they state this incredibly clearly in their foundational text on applied behavior analysis. They actually equate failing to measure behavior to medical malpractice.
Wow. Medical malpractice. That's heavy.
It is heavy. They argue it's the exact equivalent of, say, a triage nurse refusing to check a patient's vital signs, like ignoring their blood pressure, completely bypassing their heart rate, simply because the patient is sitting up and, looks fine.
Right.
If a medical professional did that and the patient crashed, they would lose their license immediately.
For sure.
We are ethically bound to treat behavioral data with that exact same gravity.
Okay, well, let me push back on that just a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Because we all know we need data, right? That is day one stuff.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the reality of the clinic floor. Caseloads are heavy. RBTs, the registered behavior technicians, they are managing complex, sometimes really intense behaviors. If we demand that they carry a tablet and log every single instance of a behavior the exact second it happens, aren't we, destroying their ability to actually build rapport and stay present with the client?
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
Right, so how do we balance this absolute mandate for data integrity with actual human connection?
It is a phenomenal question. And frankly, it is the exact difference between a novice supervisor and a top-tier clinical director.
Right.
Elite clinicians do not see data collection as an interruption to the human connection. They design systems where data collection is seamlessly integrated into the natural flow of the session.
I see.
It becomes part of the reinforcement cycle itself. But to your point about how often we actually need to be looking at this data to make decisions, there are hard, fast rules.
Okay, so it's not just a vibe.
Not at all. You cannot just review a graph when you happen to have, a free hour on a Friday afternoon. You have to build specific evaluation criteria right into the protocol.
So what are the exact metrics then? What is the threshold where the data is just screaming at you to do something?
According to the clinical standards we use for RBT to BCBA communication, it is highly systematic. Rule number 1, if there are 3 consecutive days of no progress.
3 days.
Yes, 3 consecutive days. Or if the data is trending in the wrong direction, meaning a behavior you want to decrease is actually going up for 3 days, the intervention requires immediate modification.
Wow. Immediate.
You do not wait a month. You modify. That might mean adding stimulus prompts, like a visual cue to help the client get the right answer, or altering the reinforcement schedule so they get access to a reward more frequently.
Got it. And what if it's going perfectly?
Well, that brings us to rule number 2. If a client scores 80% or above for 4 consecutive days or 100% for 2 consecutive days.
Okay, 4 days at 80, 2 days at 100.
Exactly. That is your undeniable database signal to push forward. You modify the plan by fading your prompts or advancing the client to the next target step.
You don't just sit there.
No, you cannot let a client languish on a skill they have already mastered just because you haven't, bothered to check the graph yet.
I love that. The data it's like a living, breathing system.
Yeah.
It is constantly telling you to either push the gas or hit the brakes.
Precisely.
It balances giving a treatment enough time to actually take effect without wasting the client's incredibly valuable time.
Right.
So let's translate this into a real-world clinic scenario, straight from our advanced mock exam sources.
Let's do it.
Imagine a clinician named Amir. He is reviewing an intervention aimed at increasing a client's on-task behavior in a classroom setting. So Amir looks at the graph. The overall trend over the month is clearly moving up.
Okay, good.
The on-task behavior is increasing, but there is massive variability in the daily data points. Yeah, Monday it's sky high, Tuesday it completely bottoms out, Wednesday it spikes again. The data looks like a total roller coaster. But since the overall trend line is pointing up, do we just, let it ride?
Absolutely not. No, you do not ignore wild variability just because the trend line happens to point in a general upward direction.
Okay, why not?
Because as a behavior analyst, massive variability is a massive red flag. It is the data telling you that you do not have functional control over the environment.
Wow.
Amir must stop and analyze the underlying causes of this variability. Are there environmental factors at play? Is the behavior spiking only on days when a specific motivating operation is present?
Right, and for those listening, a motivating operation is basically something that changes how much a person wants a specific reward. Like if the client didn't sleep at all the night before, suddenly the opportunity to, take a break is 50 times more powerful than it was on Monday.
Exactly. So you have to ask, is it a sleep issue? Is it a medication change? Or, and this is incredibly common, is there a lack of procedural integrity across the different staff members running the case?
Procedural integrity, yeah.
Which simply means the extent to which the intervention is being implemented exactly as it was written. If RBTA is running the program perfectly by the book and RBTB is drifting from the protocol and, giving the client extra attention when they shouldn't be, you are going to see a highly variable graph.
For sure.
You have to make a database decision to investigate that variability. You cannot just celebrate the upward trend and look the other way.
Because if you do that, you are setting yourself up for failure. It makes me think about baking, honestly.
Baking.
Yeah, imagine treatment integrity is sitting at 60%. It's like trying to judge a brand new recipe for chocolate chip cookies, but half of your chefs in the kitchen are using salt instead of sugar.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The cookies taste terrible, but you can't declare the recipe a failure because the execution was completely compromised. You don't actually know if the plan works because the plan wasn't actually run.
That is a brilliant analogy, and it perfectly highlights the danger here. The subjective bias of the chefs, or in our case, the clinicians, creeps in.
Yep.
They might think they are doing it right, but the execution is fundamentally flawed. And this brings us directly into the vulnerabilities of how we gather our data in the first place.
Exactly. So let's pivot to where things really go wrong. Because if execution can be flawed, the way we measure that execution can be just as compromised.
Oh, easily.
Based on our sources, where do test takers, and everyday clinicians for that matter, usually drop the ball when evaluating effectiveness? Like, what are the biggest traps?
There are 3 major traps we see constantly. Trap number 1 is prioritizing subjective reporting over direct measurement.
Subjective reporting.
Yeah. We see this beautifully illustrated in a classic mock exam scenario featuring a BCBA named Sven. So Sven implemented a behavior plan 2 weeks ago, and he wants to know if it's working. The distractor answers on the exam, the ones perfectly designed to trick you, will suggest interviewing the RBT, asking the parents how they feel it's going, or talking to the client.
And those are wrong.
Those are massive traps.
It feels natural, right? Like, you want to ask the people involved.
Of course you do.
But subjective interviews are inherently indirect, and they are heavily biased by social desirability. The RBT might be completely overwhelmed and just doesn't want to tell you, their supervisor, that your brilliant, carefully crafted plan is completely failing.
Yep.
And the parents, they desperately want to believe their child is progressing, so they sugarcoat what they're seeing at home.
Precisely. Human beings naturally want to please you. They want to deliver good news. But the only correct answer on the exam, and frankly the only ethical clinical action in real life, is analyzing the daily objective behavior tracking charts.
Because the graph doesn't lie.
The graph does not care about your feelings. It
Right.
does not sugarcoat anything.
So true. So if they are trying to please us, or if they're just completely overwhelmed by a tough session, what happens when the staff themselves become the bottleneck for the data? Like when they wait until the very end of the day to write it all down,
That leads us right into the second trap.
which is,
Trap number 2 is delayed data recording and data fabrication, which is heavily emphasized in our supervisor's guidebook source material.
fabrication. Wow.
This is a systemic issue in the field. If an RBT waits until the end of a 4-hour shift to record data on a behavior that happens, say, dozens of times an hour, it completely compromises the accuracy of your measurement.
Because you just can't remember.
Exactly. Human memory decays exponentially. If you are making clinical decisions based on data that was guessed at in the parking lot at the end of a long Friday shift, you are operating on invalid data. You are basically hallucinating a clinical reality.
You're just guessing. And guessing is essentially fabricating.
Yes, and the guidebook is unequivocally clear about this. Falsified or fabricated data like an RBT, filling out the data sheet before the session even starts just to get it over with.
Ugh, the worst.
It leads to erroneous clinical decisions that directly harm the client. You might keep a child on an ineffective intervention for months just because the data sheet said it was working. Data fabrication requires immediate formal disciplinary action, often leading to termination.
Yeah, you have to.
You simply cannot build a clinical house on a foundation of fake data.
Right. So if we are acting on SAKE data or severely delayed data, what happens when we're running a highly restrictive procedure?
Oh, this is critical.
Say we are using a punishment-based plan. This isn't just about a kid learning a math skill a little bit slower. This is where ethics really come into play.
This brings us to the third trap.
Trap 3 is violating Ethics Code 2.15, which is strictly about minimizing risk to the client. This is arguably the most critical trap of all.
Oh, okay, break that down. If you are using a restrictive procedure, say a timeout protocol or a response cost where a client loses tokens for dangerous behavior, continuing that procedure without continually evaluating its effectiveness is a severe ethical violation.
Right, because by definition, punishment procedures restrict a client's liberty, or they introduce an aversive element.
Exactly.
The ethical burden on the clinician is monumental there.
It is. Punishment must work rapidly. The entire mechanism of punishment is designed to immediately suppress a behavior. If your daily data shows that the punishment procedure is not reducing the severe behavior in a very timely manner, you must modify it or discontinue it immediately.
You can't just let it ride.
No, you cannot just let a restrictive procedure run for 3 or 4 weeks while waiting to see if it, eventually works. If the data isn't showing a clear, rapid decrease, you are simply punishing a human being without providing them any therapeutic benefit.
Which means you are causing harm, full stop.
Yes.
The data is your only defense against slipping into unethical practice. Okay, let's take all of this clinical depth and let's focus directly on passing the exam. Let's translate this into Pearson VUE logic. How do we beat the test when these concepts pop up? Give us the exact formulas.
All right, Formula 1. If you see a question asking for the best way to communicate progress to a parent who is frustrated and thinks the intervention isn't working, choose the answer that says trend. Do not choose level.
Okay, let me unpack exactly why that is, because understanding the mechanism behind the answer is how you actually remember it.
Let's do.
Level refers to the average value of the data on the y-axis. It's the absolute number of behaviors happening today.
Yeah.
If a parent sees their child had 20 severe tantrums today, that high level triggers a massive emotional reaction.
Right, they panic.
They panic. They think the plan is a disaster. Trend, on the other hand, is the slope of the data path over time. It visually hacks the brain.
Yeah.
When you show that parent a trend line that is steadily pointing downward over the last 4 weeks, you neutralize their panic. You prove visually that the behavior is on a trajectory toward extinction, which is when a behavior completely stops because it's no longer being reinforced. Even if they had 20 tantrums today, the trend line proves the overall engine of the behavior is dying.
That is a phenomenal explanation of the psychology behind the graph. Level tells the clinician where the behavior sits today, but trend tells the stakeholder where the behavior is going tomorrow.
Right.
Trend is the ultimate visual communication tool to maintain buy-in from parents and teachers.
Perfect. What is the second exam formula we need to lock in?
Formula 2. If you see a scenario on the exam involving treatment drift, where staff slowly stop following the plan over time, or an observation that explicitly states there is, say, 60% treatment integrity, you need to choose answers that involve measuring the extent to which the intervention is implemented as planned, retraining the staff, and delivering performance feedback.
This goes right back to the chocolate chip cookie analogy.
Yes, it does.
The trap on the exam is going to try and lure you into ignoring the low integrity by telling you the target behavior is decreasing.
Mm.
They will say, integrity is at 60%, but the client's aggressive behavior has dropped to near zero. Do not fall for it.
Never fall for it. You never overlook low treatment integrity just because you got lucky and the behavior went down. If integrity is at 60%, you do not have experimental control.
You're blind.
You have no idea why the behavior went down. It might have decreased because of a completely unrelated variable in the environment, which means the minute that variable changes, the aggression will come right back. You must address the staff behavior and retrain them before you can ever trust the client's data.
So even if the client looks like they're getting better, if your staff is doing the protocol wrong, your first intervention is fixing the staff. That is such a critical pivot in how you look at a clinic. Okay, I want to elevate the conversation now. Let's move from simply passing the Pearson VUE exam to becoming a top 1% clinical director. I want the advanced insight. What is the clinical power insight regarding database decision-making that most BCBAs completely miss?
The advanced insight pulls directly from a profound point in the Cooper text, and it flips how we normally think about data.
Okay.
In our field, we are constantly talking about catching our failures. We use data to realize when a treatment isn't working so we can pivot, right? Change the reinforcement or fade the prompts.
Right, that's standard.
But what most BCBAs completely miss is that without frequent, precise measurement, you are highly vulnerable to discontinuing a highly effective treatment.
Wait, discontinuing an effective treatment. Walk us through exactly how that happens. Paint that picture for us.
It happens because human subjective judgment is incredibly flawed. We cannot always detect micro advances with our naked senses.
Right.
Let's say you have a clinician who has been running an intensive reading fluency program for a student. They've been at it for 3 weeks. The clinician is exhausted. The student gets easily frustrated. Last week, the student was reading 70 words per minute. This week, they are reading 80 words per minute.
Right. And to the naked ear, to a teacher who is just sitting there listening to a kid read out loud in a busy classroom, 70 words per minute and 80 words per minute sound virtually identical.
Exactly.
It still sounds a bit choppy. It still feels like a struggle.
The sensory experience of the teacher hasn't changed at all. So if you aren't actively measuring with a stopwatch and graphing that exact rate on a daily basis, that exhausted clinician might look at the student, feel the frustration in the room, and think, this intervention just isn't making a difference. It's too hard.
Oh, wow.
They might walk over to the filing cabinet, pull the behavior plan, and throw it in the garbage. They abandon a perfectly good, highly effective intervention simply because it didn't feel like it was working.
That is massive. You could be throwing away the exact right intervention, the thing that was actually going to change this kid's life, just because the human ear isn't a precision instrument.
Yep.
I mean, 10 extra words a minute over a week is phenomenal progress.
Yeah.
But it's invisible to the naked ear. Direct, frequent measurement catches the invisible success.
It does. Data protects the client from our own sensory limitations and our own emotional fatigue. It proves to you that your hard work is paying off, even when you can't feel it in the moment.
I love that. Data protects the client from us.
Yes.
If this helped you, follow behavioral intelligence, share this episode with another RBT or BCBA who's studying, and leave a comment or review. That's how we grow, and how I keep creating high-level content for you.
At Amethyst Therapy Services, Inc., we build clinicians, not just test passers. Visit us at www.amethysttherapyservices.com or email info@amethysttherapyservices.com.
We just spent this entire time establishing that our clinical decisions are only as good as our data. But as we discussed with the traps, our data is only as good as the behavior of the staff recording it. Knowing what we know about human behavior and the effort it takes to log information perfectly, what contingencies do you currently have in place to reinforce your behavior technicians for taking accurate, immediate data? If you aren't actively measuring and reinforcing their data collection behavior, how can you ever really trust the data they hand you? Think about it.